Hello, welcome back to Flint Hills Briar. I'm Gareth. Just hanging out in my spring Flint Hills campsite here. Yeah, this late morning, early afternoon, I went on a little hike around the general area. This afternoon, I've just been kicking back and relaxing and listening to the sounds of nature, the sounds of the birds, and it's been some squirrels, uh, one or two that I've heard and seen around, and just been thinking about stuff and listening to some stuff. I've been listening to the Audible version of Jack Kerouac's On the Road, which is a book that I bought back when I was like, I don't know, 17 or 18 years old. There was some guy who was on like probably like ABC or CBS, something like that, one of their news shows. And he did this little like hitchhiking thing. He talked about Jack Kerouac a little bit. And the book sounded interesting, so I bought it and I started reading it. I didn't get very far with it, but I actually specifically remember reading that book in my bedroom um, while smoking a cigarette or two, probably just puffing on them like I puff on pipes and cigars, not inhaling, but just because I didn't want to start going down that road, even back then. Um, Even though I was a stupid teenager, I knew that I didn't want to start getting hooked on cigarettes, but definitely felt like smoking some of them. But yeah, I remember sitting there and reading On the Road and puffing on a few cigarettes with like I had like a fan or something blowing air out the window. So it blew all the smoke out. That's my early memories of On the Road. But yeah, it's an interesting book. I never knew that I never would have imagined that book talked about going to Colorado and spending time in Denver and going up to Central City and all that stuff. But anyway, yeah, there's some little pieces here and there in that book that are pretty beautifully, or, that are pieces of writing of a good bit of beauty, I have to say. I think it's always something when an author can say something in like maybe a sentence or two, which just really captures something in a beautiful way. And there's some of that in that book. Um, but yeah, I noticed there are certain aspects of some of those little, 1 to 2 sentence sorts of things that kind of remind me a bit of some of the stuff of some of the better little jewels of Hunter S. Thompson's writing. Um, I kind of feel like Jack Kerouac did it better. I know some people want to say that some people are of the opinion that Hunter S. Thompson was a crappy writer and all that, and I think that's kind of in some ways easy for some people to say, um, especially if you don't agree with his many of his political ideas and that sort of thing. Which generally speaking, I don't agree with a lot of his political stuff. Although I still find him an interesting writer that I enjoy, and some of the stuff he wrote was genuinely very funny, and that's really why I enjoy it. It's just kind of like it can be kind of a wild ride, a wild and funny ride, an entertaining ride. And that's why I enjoy him. And he just like I've talked about before, he just, for some reason, he seems like an interesting person. Obviously not somebody that I think anybody should really try to emulate, but he was a unique individual, put it that way. But I just actually got done. I mean, when I haven't been listening to the sounds of nature, I actually came out. It's the 2nd of May today, and the full moon was yesterday. And I very specifically came out to this area because in other times in the spring, I have noticed that there's a lot of whippoorwills out here. I think this is, at least if you look on a map online, it looks like this is probably about as far as the eastern whippoorwill gets range-wise. And I did a little bit of looking into things, and the whippoorwills call more when there's like a half moon, half to full moon, and they're more active, like even calling like throughout the whole night on full moon nights. And so I very specifically came out camping this weekend to hopefully hear some whippoorwills, and I did, and I noticed they seem to call throughout the night. I'll be interested to see if they do that tonight, because technically tonight's not the full moon anymore, but it's pretty close. So I don't know how much that matters to them. I mean, I'm sure that they're not looking at a calendar that says it's a full moon, and that's when they decide to stay up all night and call throughout the night. But anyway, yeah. So I was just watching just got time to do it. I watched a like 40-minute video of Matt Walsh's where he's talking about like why American rock music has died, or maybe not so much why it has died, but why it's currently not a thing, and talk about some cultural stuff like that. And I've just been kind of thinking, and not that it's directly related to that, but I've just really recently I've been kind of pondering this idea a bit of just how I've learned to sit back and just kind of like see how things play out. Yeah, I'm wearing my Missouri Meerschaum sweatshirt here, smoking figure I should smoke a Missouri Meerschaum pipe. This is a little Icelandic pipe. I got this, I don't know, a year and a half ago, something like that. And I have to admit, the way they drilled it, the deeper in the bowl, it's wider than it is around the top. It's like they didn't really drill it out, ream it out, whatever, very well. Been meaning to get like a little circular sanding thing and get in there and widen the top so it is straight, but it still works. I think this may sort of be a Christmas pipe. At least that's the time of year I got it, and it does look kind of Christmassy with the red stem on it. Smoking a little bit of Prince Albert that I had left in a little pocket jar in my pipe bag. But yeah, I don't know. More and more recently, I've seen the value in this way of just, I guess, an attitude, I don't know, way of looking at things to where I feel like I should sit back and just kind of watch and see how certain things play out. Not jump to, don't be too fast to jump to conclusions, because a lot of times your initial conclusion may be wrong. It can kind of apply to, all sorts of stuff. But I guess I think this is something that kind of comes with once you get more years under your belt and you kind of see more things having played out in your life. You realize there's a benefit to just kind of sitting back and just kind of see how time bears things out. This is kind of silly, but one of the ways this is applied fairly recently is there's that famous Patterson-Gimlin film, the famous film of the Bigfoot walking across this creek bed, which was filmed in 1967, and it still remains probably the single best Bigfoot video or film that there is, or picture for that matter. And just over the years, there's been so many people that have tried to pick it apart and, say that, well, it's a guy in a suit. There's even a guy that claimed that he was the guy in the suit, even though aspects of the story don't really make sense. And then you have people that say that if that is a person in a suit, it is a really, really well-made suit. But frankly, back in the late 60s, the materials like spandex and stuff that you need to pull that off didn't exist. So they maintained that, like, well, technology wouldn't even allow you to really make something that good back then. Anyways, there's people that say it's baloney. There's people that say, like, no, there's a lot of, and there's some pretty technical stuff, even with the film and the camera and stuff, that people say that it points to authenticity. I don't know. My thing is, my base, deep down thoughts on it are, if that video were to be truly authentic, then what the heck is that walking through the frame there? Because I have a hard time kind of believing that. I don't know. I have issues kind of believing about that there's these big creatures walking around, because there seems to be a lack of good evidence in a lot of other ways for that. But I don't know. There's a lot of people that say they've seen things and heard things that they can't explain, and that's really hard for me to dismiss. So, simply put, I don't really know what to think about that. Don't know what to think. Don't know what to think. I'm not going to say that there's not something going on out there, but at the same time, there's other parts of my brain that are just like, yeah, I don't know about that. But anyway, so fairly recently, some guy put together some sort of a documentary where he talked to, I guess, Bob Gimlin, the primary guy not Bob Gimlin, Roger Patterson. Bob Gimlin was his friend, who I believe is still alive, although I think he's maybe in his 90s now. Roger Patterson's son, this guy made this documentary. We talked to his son, and anyway, this documentary is supposed to be rather of a bombshell, because he reveals that the Roger Patterson's family have let out the truth, as they would say, that the thing was actually a hoax. That for a long time, Roger Patterson's wife, Roger Patterson died not too many years after that film was made from cancer, but apparently his wife for a long time didn't really want the truth of it being a hoax to be let out there, because I think to some extent they made some money off of it, although I don't think they made a whole lot of money off of it. But anyway, this documentary supposedly reveals the truth that, yes, actually, turns out the whole thing, whether it's a super great costume or whatever, doesn't matter. It's fake. It's been it's been fake from the start. And apparently this documentary was shown at some sort of film festival or something, and some people saw it, including some like YouTube Bigfoot talking folks. And apparently it hasn't been released yet, because I think the guy that made it is looking for somebody to stream it or release it, and he's probably trying to get the best monetary deal and all that, which is totally understandable. So this thing hasn't been released. Not very many people have seen it, but when a few people had seen it and they started making these videos, this was like about a month ago or so. A lot of people were putting these videos up on YouTube. It's just things that, the algorithm shows me or whatever, but people saying, like, oh no, it's the truth is out there now. It's a hoax. And other people trying to poke holes in that story, like, well, I don't think what this documentary is saying is true because of this reason, that reason. And I just, from the very start with that, I'm like, I'm just going to kind of sit back and I'm going to see how this plays out. And interestingly enough, and of course, this is probably just boils down to what the algorithm of YouTube just decides to make me aware of. But a lot of that's kind of cooled down. I haven't really noticed people saying anything about it more recently. Of course, I haven't been looking either, but to see what they're saying. But just one of those things. I'm like, yeah, we'll see. We'll see how this plays out. And I think that just kind of, I apply that, I guess, to a lot of stuff. Actually back in February when I went camping, that's when this whole Iran war thing started. Started like the night I'd gone out camping. I didn't know anything about it until partway into the next Saturday. And, there were certain people who had certain hopes of how things were going to turn out with that. And I don't think that that's really worked out very well in that regard. And I think, once again, that's one of those things like, well, regardless of if we should have started stuff or whatever, that's a totally different issue. But, it's one of those things you can't, I think, get too excited or get expectations really, pointed a certain way. You just kind of need to take some time, sit back, kind of see how things play out. I mean, honestly, I really wish, I've been hoping for years that the people of Iran would be able to take their country back from the people that run it. And initially, I was a bit excited that maybe they would finally get that chance, but I don't know. Doesn't seem like that's the way it's going. But once again, it's one of these things you just got to kind of sit back and just let things play out. But I've just kind of noticed more and more that, and it's probably just kind of comes from getting a little bit older, that just is just the best way to approach a whole lot of things. Sometimes you just kind of got to take the time to sit back and, listen to the squirrels and the birds and let some time pass and see what develops with the passage of time. But anyway, those are some thoughts I just kind of had been thinking of. Yeah, watch now. Like tonight, I'll probably hear tree knocks and see something moving in the shadows or something back here. Yeah, I kind of doubt it, but we'll see. Yeah. Anyway, that's all for now. This has gone on long enough. Thanks for joining me out in my old campsite out here, and I'm Gareth with Flannels Briar. I'll see you next time.